Hello, everybody, and welcome to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is Maria-Kristina Hayden of Outfoxum. Hello, Christina. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, folks, we are in for a real treat because Christina is a world-class cybersecurity expert here to talk to us about how to keep our kids safe online, how to keep our home networks a little safer, and just generally keep making the rookie mistakes that I know I make on a daily basis because this is not my forte. So, Christina, thank you so much for coming on today. Why don't we start with tell us a little bit about your background in cybersecurity and why you have deigned to come onto our show.
Sure. So I have been in the world of cybersecurity for over a decade now, and it is absolutely my passion. I started many years ago in the Department of Defense. I was an intelligence officer helping to understand global cyber risks and cyber threats that were coming our way. And then I moved over to Wall Street after finishing my master's degree and helped some major banks put together cyber intelligence teams and cyber wargaming programs. What I've learned along the way is that it really comes down to the human and each of the decisions that you and I make every single day, whether we're a part of an organization or at home. And there's still so much work to be done there to help educate all of those folks. And that is my mission and my passion at this point, as I've started Outfoxum to really help educate globally about cyber threats and cyber hygiene.
So what was that guy's name? He was a hacker in the 80s. He got arrested, worked for the FBI, wrote that landmark book. I can't remember his name off the top, but he was like the original iconic hacker, and the book was all full of, sometimes he'd throw a script, but most of the time he'd call the secretary and be like, hey, yeah, this is John in IT. What's your password?
Exactly. It's so true. I mean, some people say that, the humans are the weakest link. I prefer a more positive spin on it, where it kind of takes the onus off the human. And you say the human is the most popular attack target, things like that. But it's true. I mean, we are gullible, loving, trusting human beings by default. It's how we're wired. And attackers know that can be the easiest way in.
Yeah. And so most of your experience has been in government level, enterprise level businesses. And that's one world. How much of that applies to, a suburban family of four with a suburban family budget and a suburban family's, predators or threats?
Yes. So that's a really great question. And this is at the core of why I decided to go out on my own and start my own companies, because as I was providing trainings and war games and seminars in organizational and corporate settings, I found that the advice I was giving all of these analysts, middle managers, senior leaders, board members were often the same things that I was telling my friends and family at dinner and at cocktail hours outside of work. When you're talking about the human side of cybersecurity, it comes down to those hygiene things. How do you handle your phone? How do you handle your password? How skeptical are you in general online? And those same habits and premises that you build at home and you enact at home are the things that you do at work as well. So there's actually so much more overlap than people think.
Wow. So I imagine, most of the professionals I bring on, if I ask them, they have a list of guys, just quit doing these things. If you just quit doing these things or start doing these things, everything will be much better for everybody. Please. What are some of the big rookie mistakes that you're finding parents and families, especially, making again and again and again?
Sure. So we could be here for 4 days going into all of these things, but the number one overarching thing that I keep repeating to families specifically is being the bearer of reality, potentially the bearer of bad news, and telling folks that it could truly happen to them. This is not a situation that cybercrime is not something that only happens to other people. And they need to be aware and skeptical and teach their children that unfortunately this is real. It's not just in movies or on the news. It could happen to us, in this living room. So that is a piece that's really important. And the other piece, which is a bit more positive, is the importance of a culture where the child feels comfortable coming to the parent anytime anything seems at all icky, as I say. If you're the kind of parent who immediately gets angry when you learn about a decision that a child made that perhaps was not the best or perhaps was dangerous, while that is very common, it can, as we've seen over many years and many, many studies and many examples, it can dissuade the child from coming to you in the future. And so as our children are spending more and more of their lives online, it's so important to work ahead of time before anything bad happens to build that culture where the child feels comfortable coming to you. Unfortunately, we're seeing so many new scams. Sextortion is one of them, where children are actually taking their own lives instead of going to their parents and telling them what's going on, because there's so much shame. So I have some tips, for both of those, but those are the two big ones. Don't kid yourself into thinking that it could never be you or your kid or your family, and create a culture where no matter what's going on, your child can tell you what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny how many experts I have from different fields who come in, and that's basically like 90% of the advice can boil down to those two things. Don't get your head out of the sand. Let's not ostrich, and create a loving relationship with your kids where they trust you not to lose it if they make a mistake or something's going wrong. I think one of the things to remember about those things is when we feel angry about something, our kid made a mistake with their password, our kid sent a text to the wrong person, our kids started having a relationship online with an adult who's inappropriate. Fear is really just, anger is really just fear dressed up for Halloween.
Right.
And so when we have that impulse to shout, that impulse to be angry about it, it's good as the adults in the relationship to sit down with that emotion and figure out, okay, what is it I'm scared of? And how can we beat that? How can we overcome it?
That's right. Or at least being aware as a parent that it's normal and very common to have an emotional reaction when you learn of something like that. But if you can be aware of that reaction and be aware that you want to ultimately, actually as quickly as possible, get a hold of that emotion, so that you don't dissuade them from coming to you in the future, you're already ahead of the pack. You may catch yourself overreacting, but you can make up for that by softening your tone, taking a breath, revisiting the conversation. And it's like you would if, you looked out the window and saw your child jumping off a massive ledge with their bike, because the other friends were doing it. If it was really dangerous, you'd probably, well, depending on the kind of parenting style you have, you might go running out, just screaming at them, because you could have easily watched them crack their head open on the pavement. We're now in a world where there can be as much damage done digitally as physically. And, we as parents have to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. This also reminds me of some advice I've gotten from people who are specifically focused on cell phone safety for kids, is that although there needs to be a plan in place for discipline, there needs to be a plan in place for what we'll do as a family if a child does something risky or breaks the rules. Taking away the phone should never be on the table, because again, as you say, that just encourages them to be sneaky when they mess up instead of coming to us for help finding the solutions.
That's right. I have heard a lot of experts say that, try to resist taking the phone away if there's an issue with the phone. But I've also heard of parents saying that that works, that can work in the sense that it forces the child to just take a break from the technology for a day or a two or a week and realize that they will survive. So there are a couple of ways to look at it.
Yeah, and that's, what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of temporary reprieve from the phone can especially be helpful for a child who's suffering from cyberbullying or screen addiction.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Very, very true.
Yeah. So you are currently coaching businesses and families and individuals about cybersecurity, cyber safety. One question that has come across my plate a bunch, and I have my own opinion, but I'd love to hear yours.
Sure.
Past words or past phrases?
Phrases, always, always.
Yes.
Absolutely no question. So I catch myself saying passwords because, my whole life, that's what we've been calling them. But I am actively training my brain and my mouth to only say passphrases. And it actually makes people stop and say, wait, do you mean passwords? And then they think about it and they say, wait a minute, a phrase. Okay, multiple words. Without having to spend any additional airtime, you're teaching people that it should be more than one word. So it's very, very important. The number one most important factor for strength of a passphrase is length. So you don't need special characters. You don't need capital letters. You don't need symbols if you don't want. If it's long enough, none of those things matter. It can be all lowercase, as long as it's not an obvious phrase like somewhere over the rainbow. That's too obvious. But if it's multiple words strung together, all lowercase, and it's 18, 19, 20, 25 characters, you are protected against the most common attacks that cyber criminals are using. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's my favorite one.
And it's not only more secure, but you can remember it instead of having to write it down on a Post-it at your desk, which defeats the purpose of a password.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about the writing it down. I think, but your point is a good one about being able to remember it. Part of the reason why people default to reusing the same passwords for different accounts is because they can't remember all the different varieties. They have a capital S and a dollar sign, and it's impossible to remember. With phrases, you can type them in an instant, even if they're 25 characters long. You remember them.
So for example, you could have your banking password could be, I am the very model of a modern major general. And your email password could be, I have information, animal, mineral, and vegetable, or something like that, that no one's going to guess. That a computer is going to take till the heat death of the universe to brute force.
That's right.
And
that's exactly right.
Multiple repeat offender guest on the show, Andy Murphy of Secure Dad, he actually has a book out that's it looks like a kind of a silly parenting book, but the inside is just blank to store your password information. They just sit on the desk like a purloined letter.
I love it. And, I do get asked a lot about the security of writing your passwords down. And, there's a risk sliding scale for all of this. So people say to me, is it a good idea to use a password manager, or to save your passwords in your browser, or to write them down? I say, well, it depends on a lot of factors. And I would say, for instance, writing them down on a book that's on your that's on your bookshelf at home is safer than saving them safer than using the same password for everything. The same terrible password for everything. Safer than putting it in your browser keychain. It's safe, but it's not as safe potentially as some other choices. But frankly, a lot of people I know are going back to analog, and they are writing passwords down, because what are the chances that somebody breaks into your home, finds that list at the same time that they're hacking your computer? I mean, chances are limited, especially if you're hiding them. So I like that idea.
And it gets down to, physical security is the same way, where it's often a payoff between security and convenience. Something as simple as, if you really need to pee when you got home and the door's locked, that everybody's had that moment where they're kind of dancing while they're trying to get the key in there. So it's inconvenient to have your door locked, but it's much more secure.
That's right. And every family
Mhm.
has to make those decisions for themselves. I mean, a lot of parents don't like to hear
Mhm.
this, but you are the CIO of your own home. You are the
Mhm.
CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer of your
Mhm.
own home. You decide the equivalent of policies and procedures for your home and for your family. So you may
Mhm.
decide that it is just too convenient to have Alexa, or it is just too convenient to, you know,
Mhm.
let's think of another example, like not have webcam covers on your
Mhm.
machine, but there's a risk associated with that.
Mhm.
And you, as the head of a home, can make those decisions for yourself, but there's a risk associated with all of that.
Mhm. So you mentioned a couple of risks that we have in our homes of the cameras on our laptops and our cell phones,
Yes.
and Alexa, or what's Alexa's evil twin that from the other company? Um,
Google Home.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, there are
hmm
multiples, but
yeah. Um, so what are the issues with those, and what are some other ones like that that we're commonly popping in and maybe not thinking so much about what risks they pose?
this is a really great
Mhm.
topic. I think if more parents thought critically about
Mhm.
what kind of Wi-Fi devices they were allowing into their home, families would be a lot safer across the globe. I think
Mhm.
we are, you know, um, in a just such a
Mhm.
consumer focused population, meaning that it's all about marketing and it's all about convenience,
Mhm.
and we're being sold all kinds of devices in our home that have Wi-Fi connectivity and cameras and remote access from your phone from many miles away. And it's really not always necessary. It goes back to that convenience risk
Mhm.
sliding scale. Um, I have security professionals in my circles that love Alexa, and they use her
Mhm.
to do 5 things every morning before 9 a.m. But they feel confident because of their backgrounds in their
Mhm.
ability to set Alexa up in a way that will not reveal too much about their lives
Mhm.
to Amazon. Most people don't have those kind of tech skills, right?
Mhm.
But you may not care too much whether or not Amazon has
Mhm.
all that information about you. So that's a decision you make. But in general, things like toasters, things like Zumba vacuums, things like washing machines do not need access to the internet. These are all potential
Mhm.
doors for attackers to get into your
Mhm.
home network. And once they're in your home network, they can see everything you're doing on every device, all the things your children are doing, manipulate cameras, all the kinds of things that parents, worry about when they try to
Mhm.
fall asleep at night. So, you know, thinking about being the CIO of your own home and the CISO of your own home, it starts with what kind of devices are you bringing into the home and what physical security measures are you putting into
Mhm.
place? You can buy a webcam cover for front and back of your child's phone. That way,
Mhm.
if they don't intend to be using the camera, they're not.
Mhm.
No one else can be using it either. There's a lot of
Mhm.
physical security pieces that I think
Mhm.
people forget about when it comes to cybersecurity.
So in that case, it's the phone, the equivalent of putting a piece of tape over the
Yes,
peephole in your door,
that's
so that
right.
people can't look in at you as well.
That's
Which
right.
I still do in any hotel that I'm in that has one.
That's smart.
Yeah.
And we
Mhm.
talked about sextortion a little bit ago, and
Yeah.
the
Could you
threats.
define that real quick for the audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So extortion is a scam
Mhm.
where mostly children are being
Mhm.
lured into sending nude or partially nude photos to criminals who
Mhm.
are then turning around and extorting them and saying, I'm going to share this photo with everyone in your school and everyone on your soccer team unless you pay me $600.
Mhm.
So it's called sextortion because there is a sexting or a nude element to it, and it's
Mhm.
extortion, right? And it's
Mhm.
over text usually. So um what was I going to mention about that? Lost my train of thought. Don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. My train of thought is usually still boarding at the station. But we were talking about We were talking about cell phone camera covers.
Yes, thank you.
Then,
Yes. So what we're seeing with sextortion is many times criminals have actually gotten a child to send them a photo that they shouldn't have sent. But other times, the criminal doesn't actually have anything incriminating. They're just trying to scare the child into thinking they do. And they'll say things like, I have been watching you through your webcam for the last 7 days. If your child has a physical webcam cover on their phone, they will know that's not true, that this stranger doesn't have any footage of them because it's physically covered. And they will not fall for the scam. They will not be afraid. They will not pay anything or do any other making harmful decisions. So some simple things like that can really, really help.
And that ties well to one of the pieces of advice I've gotten from multiple experts on the phone safety for teens is to have a very strict no bedrooms, no bathrooms policy for the mobile devices for kids. And that helps with sleep hygiene as well. But I could see it working there as when the guy says, well, I've been watching you through the webcam. Great. You've got footage of me eating Cheetos and playing video games.
Exactly. I'm not scared of you. I don't believe what you're saying. And for the children who have their phones with them in bed all night and nothing is, their webcams are not covered. Someone watching through their camera could have seen them changing into their pajamas, doing all kinds of things. So you're exactly right. The no bedroom, no bathroom policy can also help with that and really take the teeth out of those kinds of fake scams, make them not believable anymore.
Yeah. And as you say, also, even if we're not being as safe with those things and a child does get that threat, even if it is real, having that relationship with our kids where they can come to us and say, Mom, Dad, I messed up, and trust us to vigorously attack the problem instead of take our own fears out on them is huge.
I love the way you put that. I also read something recently, which I thought was a great suggestion. Some parents are designating a notebook as something that a child can write in if they don't feel comfortable having a conversation with the parent, if they're too embarrassed or ashamed to actually get the words out. They can have a notebook where if there's ever anything that they want to talk about but they don't want to talk about, write about it in the notebook, leave it there, and then the parent reads it at some point when the child's at school or the child's sleeping, and the parent writes back. And I've heard of that working really well. Depends on the dynamics of the family, the dynamics of the child, but coming up with creative ways to open up those pathways of communication on really tricky subjects. If your child is embarrassed and ashamed, it's hard.
Yeah.
So I liked the writing method as an alternative too.
And that also gives us as parents that lag time of we read it, we freak out when the kid's not even in the room, and then we can sit down and craft a measured response.
Yes, exactly right. So helpful to the parents as well. And you can confer, if you've got a partner, you can say, okay, what do you want to, how do we want to handle this? Nobody's on the spot, not the child and nor the parent.
One thing I'm getting out of this conversation that I think is very empowering for parents is I think a lot of us feel helpless in the face of cyber threats because this isn't our zone. This isn't our area of expertise. But 80% of what we've been talking about here is analog.
That's right.
Skills that we have every day, tools that we know how to use.
Yes, it's true. The other thing that is really a helpful blanket solution to various types of cybercrime, the kinds in which your devices, files, photos, maybe in the picture. Let's say there's malware on a device or something's malfunctioning or a bad guy has locked someone's machine. If you have been taking backups of your most important items along the way, you won't care what is malfunctioning. You can throw your laptop into the lake because you have what's important backed up. That's something that, as I've spoken with parents all over the globe, most of them are not doing religiously. It seems kind of like a lot of work. It's like a technical thing that they have to figure out. but let me assure you, it is so easy to do. I mean, you go to the store, you buy an external hard drive, you plug it into your machine, and you drag over any files, photos, important documents, and then you can sleep so soundly knowing that from a technical perspective, your most important documents are in a separate physical location. And every month I set a timer on mine, or on my phone, I set an alarm, and I do a quick update for anything that's changed in the last month. So if my machine is locked up, doesn't matter. I haven't lost anything of value.
And where do you keep your backup hard drive?
I keep my backup hard drive in a drawer in my office. It's not
right there in the house.
It's not under lock and key. If I had a safe, I'd put it in the safe. But the point is to have a separate physical backup. Cloud backups are helpful too. That's the next best option. I think many people have either iCloud or Dropbox or some other kind of cloud backup, and that's better than nothing. But we've also seen attackers targeting cloud service providers, and I feel most secure when I have the hard drive in my hand.
So that hard drive, or even a flash drive for a lot of us, because we just need copies of a couple of credit cards in our will, right? Just in the fireproof safe, along with the handgun and whatever, and the birth certificates.
Yes, exactly right. A flash drive, or thumb drive is fine, and depends how many documents, how many photos you have, how much storage space you need. But that is another kind of blanket tip that I give folks. They say, where do I start? Where do I begin? Do I need to start with two-factor authentication or VPNs? And they start to get very overwhelmed. And I start talking about culture, talking about backups, and you rapidly start reducing the risk to you and your family from cybercrime with some of those easy decisions.
Now, you use the phrase two-factor authentication. Could you discuss that quickly for our audience? You've all done this at this point, but not everybody knows the term.
Yes, everyone by now, anyone who's internet connected, anyone who's listening to this podcast or watching this has definitely come across two-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called multi-factor authentication, or MFA, but essentially it is that second authenticator before you're allowed into a website or a system. So let's say you want to log into your bank account. You go to, let's say, chase.com, and you enter in your password. They have two-factor authentication turned on by default, and they're going to ask you if they can send you a code or give you a call or verify you with some second method. That's two-factor authentication. And it goes a long way to protecting your accounts. So another tip that I tell folks, when they've done the basics things, they feel their home culture is strong, they're not buying a million Wi-Fi connected devices in their home, they've got their backups, and they want to go a little deeper, I say, make a list of the 10 or the 5 most important websites for you, or the most important accounts that you have. So investment account, bank account, cloud backup account, those kinds of things. Make a list of the top 5 and go to log into them. If it doesn't prompt you for a two-factor authentication to log in, then go into settings and turn it on. Start with the 5 most important.
And again, that gets back to convenience versus security, because I know that sometimes I'm trying to log into my credit card and I go, my phone's in the other room. And you get up and you stomp over to the bedroom and get the phone, and it's a pain in the butt, but it is a much less of a pain in the butt than getting your bank account hacked. That
is the right way to look at it. It's an inconvenience. Yes. It takes an extra 60 seconds. Yes. If someone were to access your bank account because you had a single password that you've used before and you don't have 2FA turned on, you're going to have much more than 60 seconds of pain. You're going to have dollar signs of pain and days of pain. And that's what I have to keep reminding people is, I know, but it's 60 seconds. And they're like, okay, you're right.
So from a rank beginner standpoint, kind of the average parent, at this point, we've been online for 20 years or so, but we're still not experts by any stretch of the imagination. The best things we can do is make sure our passphrases are secure, make sure that we're practicing good password hygiene, and then think carefully about the devices in our homes and the ways that those can be exploited by people who get in. What are some other things that we can do or stop doing to batten down those internet hatches and keep our families safer?
Sure. So I kind of organize these pieces of advice into two categories. There's your role as the CISO of your own home, what you're doing to make the devices in your home more secure. And then there's the side of engaging your children about the topics of cyber safety and cyber hygiene online. So I'll give you a couple more in each. So on the physical devices side, run software updates on all devices, yours, shared devices, anything that's Wi-Fi connected in your home. Like if you already bought the vacuum that's Wi-Fi connected and you don't want to throw it away, or donate it, make sure that it's receiving software updates. And that means you need to go to the manufacturer website and follow the instructions to make sure that it's receiving updates. What updates do are help plug the holes that could be security vulnerabilities. That's why running those updates are so important. Make sure that your children, with any devices they have, are running software updates whenever they're available. And as a parent, you're probably going to have to check that unless you can get them to do it. But software updates are really, really important. All the devices in the home that are computers, so phones, tablets, and computers should also have antivirus, whether it's an Apple or not an Apple. I hear all the time, oh, I've got a Mac, I'm safe. Sorry, guys, not the case. That used to be okay back when cyber attackers were not writing very much malware for Apple devices. Those days are gone. Yeah. Everybody should have it. What are you going to say?
Oh, not really. I was confirming.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I was nodding agreement. That's a really good point about the updates, especially though. My brother has worked for Microsoft since the 90s and spent about a decade at Xbox, and almost every single one of those updates included at least one patch of code that came from some guys back in the room going, oh, wow, that dude almost got in. We need to patch that up and we need to close that door, don't we?
Yes, it's true. And I know that running updates is another inconvenient thing.
Yeah.
It pops up at the wrong time every time. So what I tell people, because we have to be realistic here, right? Everybody's multitasking. They've got a million tabs up. It's never a good time to restart. It's not required that you restart immediately when you see that pop up. What I do is I have committed to myself that when I get a software update pop up on one of my devices, I give myself till the end of the day. I don't do it right then, but I tell myself before I log out for the day or for the night, I will do this update. And that takes the pressure off, but it still allows me to be safe, relatively quickly. So one other tip about protecting home devices is changing the router and Wi-Fi default passwords for the home. So everyone knows that, when you set up your router at your house, it comes with what appears to be a very secure password. It's long, it's a phrase, there's numbers, it's like copper umbrella turtle 56555. And that looks really long and strong. It's not, because it's the default. You can Google right now, Linksys router model 405 default passwords, and you will find them on the internet. Don't ask me why those manufacturers publish the passwords, but they do. And attackers know that. And they're using those default passwords to essentially break into home networks. And once, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, once you have access to a home network, you have access to potentially every device touching that network, every phone, every laptop, every tablet, every vacuum. So what I tell folks is make sure that you're changing the default password on your router and to your Wi-Fi network. Those are two separate things. You Google, let's say you have a certain kind of router, you Google that manufacturer name and the word router and say, how to change password, and they'll walk you through. It's not hard. And once you've done that, in that same website where you're changing the passwords, you can turn on a guest network, because you've just done all the work to keep your home network safe. You don't want all your friends and family who might have malware on their phones connecting to your home network, right? I set up a guest network, and everyone, whether they're my mother or my best friend, they're on the guest network, sorry, because it's separated. If someone were to infect the guest network, they can't infect the home network. So those are some other tips on the securing your home side.
One question on that. I've heard some people give advice about creating a separate network for the Internet of Things devices in the home, the cameras and whatnot. And that's not a superstitious belief. That also helps. Okay.
No, that's a good idea too. I mean, to the extent that people are interested in doing that, absolutely, yes. It's another, what we call segmentation. Anytime you can segment parts of your network, it makes it harder if an attacker were to access one segment. It's an entirely new project for them to jump to another segment. If everything's together, all the devices are together, once the attacker's in there, they can see all of it. So yes. The gold standard would be have a primary network, a guest network, a separate network for everything IoT, and continuing to segment from there even if you want. But we got to start somewhere, right? And my main message is empowerment, and that every parent can do these things. So I try to keep it high level. but yeah, if you want to do that, I applaud you.
Very cool.
Definitely. And then just on the kids side, we talked about creating that culture in the home. One thing that I've seen work really well in terms of helping children make better decisions in terms of what they post is make it real for them. Pick a person in your life. And, in the case, I have many friends who have young daughters, and what works for them is to pick the name of a kind of older male neighbor. We'll call him Mr. Jones, and tell the daughter, like, every time you post, I want you to think about, would you want Mr. Jones to see this photo? Because if you talk about criminals and bad guys, it's all very abstract. But if they have a name and a face, they have a totally different understanding of what it could mean. And of course, there's nothing wrong with Mr. Jones. It's just the idea that all kinds of people will be seeing these posts. So that's helpful from a social media perspective. And then the things like only connect with people they really know. And another one that is helpful is only download applications from trusted app stores. So from the Apple App Store or from the Google Play Store. We see a lot of malware land on children's devices because they have downloaded apps through gaming platforms, through websites, and not through the major app stores. Have much more in place in terms of security monitoring.
No, that makes really good sense. Kat Code, who's another cybersecurity expert who's been on the show, actually went one deeper on the have them think about a friend, where when the teenage daughter starts posting the bikini photos or whatever, you have that one friend over for dinner, compliment her on the photo.
Yes. So powerful.
Yeah.
Immediately the behavior will change.
Yeah. It's a dirty, rotten trick, but as parents, we use the tools available to us.
And they say an ounce of prevention, right, is a pound of cure. And so that minor moment of embarrassment, shock, confusion, it's like the 60 seconds of pain versus. So
I kind of feel bad for the friend, when you explain the situation, how they wouldn't go, hey, Hey.
Can you please play like a creepy character for this dinner party we're having?
Yeah. But and the sad thing is everybody watching this show is thinking of one specific friend right now, and you should never admit to them that you are thinking of them. But there it is.
But I mean, it's for a noble cause, right?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Well, Kristina, we have just gone through 40 minutes of high density information. And I think everybody watching has some starting points. But if they want to go even deeper, where can they find you and your work and get even the more specialized, more important information?
Sure. So if they're on Instagram or Facebook, they can search just for the Outfoxum handle, where we post all kinds of short cyber hygiene videos for people of all ages. And also they can go to the outfoxum.com website, where there are a variety of other resources, quizzes, checklists, handbooks for families and individuals.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. But before I let you go, what's the really smart question I should have asked you, but I haven't?
Ooh, good question. I would say that one of the questions that I get a lot in these sessions from exasperated parents are like, is it even worth trying to defend against these threats? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is not that hard to protect your family from a lot of the cybercrime. And that is not to disparage or judge any family that has experienced cybercrime. I'm in no way saying that those parents or that family did not do all the right things, because it does still happen. But there are a lot of easy hygiene habits that we can be growing now that parents can instill to make a big difference. And that's my main message is, yes, you can make a difference. Yes, you should start small and start making steps.
You don't have to be a world-class cybersecurity expert trained by the government with a decade of experience in private enterprise sector to keep your family safe.
You do not, not at all. No, but we're here to help if you need the help.
Outstanding. Well, thank you everybody for watching today. Thank you again for coming on today, and see you next time, everybody. Stay safe.